Welcome to episode 11 of series 4 on the Fishing Daily podcast. This is a special episode because we weren't expecting it to be happening, but we're joined by Patrick Murphy here. Patrick's just back from Europe and he has a lot to discuss. And as you can see in your background there, red sky in the morning, sailor's warning. So Patrick, what's the storm brewing in Europe at the moment?
The storm that's brewing in Europe at the moment is the ICE's advice. We see a 22% cut, Oliver, in one of the key stocks that our country is dependent on, mackerel. We lost 26% in the Brexit negotiations, and we're down 22%. A lot of people will say the fish is being overfished, and that as a result, the science is telling us that we have to reduce our catch efforts. I've come back from Europe, and this is the third year in a row now that I've come back, and we've seen cuts to the stocks, and we follow those cuts. And when you get scientific advice and follow the cuts, it's perceived that the stock rebounds and recovers. It's not. The clear and obvious reason why that's not happening is because the Faroe Islands, Iceland and Norway have increased their catches in the stocks, and they've claimed zonal attachment as a reason to doing so. Now, zonal attachment is based on the time that the fish spend in your water. I disagree with that entirely, because wherever I'm born, that's where my passport comes from. These fish predominantly are born inside Irish and UK waters and then travel up to these nomadic countries and eat and come back down again, then to repeat the cycle annually, right? The meat content is better in certain times during that calendar period, and that happens to be when they're inside in English waters and off the top of the Irish coastline. So that's when they're most valuable for processing with their fat content. So that's when people target them, not when they're in their waters, as we found out from Norwegians who have done a deal to catch their fish inside UK waters. That undermines their claim on zonal attachment. Yet they are increasing their stocks year in, year out, and the UK now are facilitating that. And the detrimental effect of that now is that they're damaging the core of the species. Where they're in the UK water, they're taking out prime fish now, fish that would be there for the recruitment, fine big fish, and they're depleting the stocks in a different way. And there's a benchmark coming next year. So you see the red cows behind me. If the benchmark shows that the stock has retreated in such a manner that it's below the biological safe limits of the stock, and that there is no cut that will bring it back up to 95% of where that BLM is, then what happens is you get a zero catch advice. Can you imagine if that happens to the fleets across Europe? They don't have anything else to catch, so that is going to destroy our processing. So that's the storms that are ahead. So what do we do about that? Europe has to step up to the plate. We met the MEPs. We told them how critical a situation we're in, and the MEPs, I think, are listening. Now, it was disappointing that we did meet 10 of our 14 MEPs, but not one MEP from the constituency of Dublin area turned up to meet us. Not one of 4 different political parties. So that was a little disappointing. To point that out, because we're going to need everybody to row in here. Ireland has the richest fishing grounds. And as I said to Sean Kelly, who said it's a very good quote, you should adopt it, our Munster MEP, I said to him, isn't it amazing that Ireland has one of the richest fishing grounds in the world, yet we're going to end up with the poorest fishermen? Now that is unbelievable. So we come back into the coastal states that are arrangements that they go into a room, they talk and talk and talk, they pat each other on the back of how polite and what a great meeting it was, and yet they don't agree with anything. They allow one country take more and damage the stocks over everybody else. Nowhere else would this be allowed. As I said, it is unbelievable, I said this at the December Council, that those who abide by the law and follow the rules are the ones that get the collective punishment by the ones who are behaving badly and destroying the stocks. It's a crazy system that's happening now. So we take the 22% cut and it goes down. If this continues, not only will the stock be changed, but if we keep cutting our side of it, we'll end up with not enough fish to survive, yet the fish are from our waters. That's the storm.
When you're looking at these negotiations and the fact going to be devastating for the country, where is the EU in this? Are they looking for fish from other sources to keep the Irish fleet going, or is this just like paddle your own canoe?
Luckily enough, no, from the work we've done and looking for a benchmark on horse mackerel, we had a biomass of 800,000 tons, and yet we weren't allowed to catch a kilo of them, which I thought was insane. That has been looked at again, and the benchmark has shown that there is a fishery there. Luckily enough, we're going to get a return of that opportunity to our vessels and our fleet. We need to monitor and watch that. All of these fish are in our waters, as you know, the juveniles here. So we have to be careful and manage these, but not ourselves. We have the smallest share, so we have to manage the fleets that are coming in to make sure that they're catching them right. We had this with Norway. We have about the opportunities you're talking about where we get them elsewhere. We get 300 ton of cod. We get as herring in Norwegian waters. And this year we couldn't get them because our minister told us that we had to secure a bycatch first of a potential bycatch. Not even ones that we had caught, but a potential. So we lost our cod fishery up there. We couldn't get the bycatch in time. Our lads, they can't go up there. It's too late in the year. The weather is too bad. We'll have to give away that fish and try and get something else for it. Even when we have an opportunity, we seem to be told we can't go at it. There's a lot going on in Europe, and the one thing is that what should Europe do? I'm hoping our foreign MEPs will stand up now and realise that if we don't do something, we're not going to have an industry. My predictions of doom and gloom, unfortunately, have been correct the last number of years, and I've taken no pleasure in that. I'm still warning it. And anybody says to me, well, is it too late? Never. A fish can spawn and recover in a very short period of time. They don't spawn an individual baby. There's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of eggs and larvae, and if they're given half a chance, they'll bounce back. So it's never too late. We have to learn from the mistakes of the past and do better for our countrymen, and for our countrymen, not our fishermen, our countrymen and women, because this is our resource. It's Ireland's resource, and we have to look after it. Crazy to be giving it away. I believe we've lost €1 billion a year, every year since we've been in the EU. That's 50 billion. That's a lot of money. Over time interest, I'd like to think what we could have done or could have used that for. And $1 billion back 50 years ago was worth a hell of a lot more than it is now. So look, it's crazy that we're having this conversation. I'm coming back from Brussels to tell you, about the dangers that we're facing and the cuts that are coming. That's just the pelagics, 28% in hay, of which we only have a 5% share. How could we be expected to lose 28% and we only catching 5% of the stock? In the Celtic Sea and haddock, 44% cuts. It's nearly half. Whiting, zero catch advice last year in the Irish Celtic Sea. It makes no sense. We're not catching these fish, but we're being told that they're not surviving. So somebody else is catching them. Somebody else is landing them. We yet be the ones that are being targeted. You heard what we put out about the SFPA in the report that said 95% of the fish are being landed here. 95% of what? Then we dug down deeper into the figures, and it worked out that of the landings that they said happened by Irish boats and foreign boats, the average for an Irish boat and landing was 3 ton, and for a foreign boat was 43 ton. That's ridiculous. These are, you can look at figures anyway. We had BIM coming out with a report to say we're only down 2%. I don't know what planet they're on and how they added those figures up, because then in the next breath they're saying that profitability in the industry went down by 82%. So I don't know who's looking at the reports. You'd wonder, do they really want to tell the truth what's going on in our industry? All they have to do is go down to the piers and then talk to lads. They can't get crew. They can't get people to go out fishing. There's plenty of fish outside there. We know that because we are trying to avoid them, to stick to the small quotas. Another point now that has entered my head that really needs to be put across to people to show we know what we're talking about. At the December Council last year, when we suffered massive cuts to our pollock, which is really important to the inshore, I asked them, how did they come up with the figures? How did they evaluate it, and what decisions were made to decide it? And I was passed over to the Marine Institute, and they said, it was the best figures to recover the stock. And I said, I don't understand how we've now seen a reduction of 78% in our quota, and that the stock will not recover in a year. Should we get it back next year? 78%, just by not catching it alone. So it transpires is that instead of looking at it scientifically and under the bycatch provisions, which allowed us to continue in fisheries, they went the historic catches. Whoever had the lion's share on paper got the lion's share again on paper. But when you look at the stock book and you look at the catch records for the last number of years, Ireland is catching 1,000 ton of that fish a year and landing it. France were catching 1,200, right? So that means we were maybe 80% of the French. So basically any bycatch provision, we should have 80% of what the French were allocated. And that's not giving out about the French. That's just logical. We got 58 tons, they got up. Like we're down to 4 ton of that fish now this year to carry on our fisheries. And if we catch that fish under the landing obligation, we choke every other fishery in Area 7. Like, that's ridiculous.
Well, it all comes down to the common fisheries policy and how ridiculous a document it is. It's up for review now. We've got a new fisheries commissioner coming in. What's the word in Europe when you were out there? Is this guy going to be pro fisheries, or is he going to be anti-fisheries and look to be more stringent about the common fisheries policy and keep it where it?
We met him thanks to Maria Walsh, the MEP. She seemed to know him in the Parliament last year, so that's a real plus for our industry when you had somebody that's there. So we met him, we spoke to him, we outlined our concerns, we gave him a document from the producer organisations and the processors that went to Brussels at our own expense to try and do something in Brussels to lobby. So as I said, we met the 10 MEPs. He is the commissioner designate. He's not appointed yet. I was surprised that Maria put it out there that we met him, but was delighted because it shows at least one of our MEPs not only is meeting us, but is following it up. And in her interview and what she said to the public, she got it all right. So she listened to us, she heard us, but it has to be acted upon. It comes down to this. People ask me, look, we have massive resource off our coastline. It's Ireland's. It's in our EEZ. Yet we're the ones that don't seem to be able to access and profit from that resource. And the resource is declining. The management of that resource is wrong. I'm hoping the commissioner from Cyprus will see that, because I think they have issues in that region, in the Mediterranean, with other countries, because you aren't the only ones fishing those waters. They have to share, and everybody has to agree, otherwise they're going to damage the sustainability of the stocks and the livelihoods of the people that are at it. It's that simple. But in Ireland, we seem to be the only ones. I know other fleets lost boats as well, and their industries contracted. But yet the ones that are remaining are building brand new boats and are able to make a living. We got rid of 40 boats and we're still struggling. And we got no reduction in our pelagic fleet, even though we lost 26%. The scheme wasn't designed. It actually said that they couldn't decommission them because they wouldn't get value for money. Yet they sent 170 million back to Europe that was there to deal with that. So what does that tell you? In my view, and on this program I've said it before, they were so adamant to give the fishermen a kicking. They wouldn't even give them the money that they had invested in the boats that we put forward in the task force. So when you're asking what do we do with the commissioner, I think we have to put to him and the MEPs that we're not whinging. We're telling it as it is. And Ireland's treatment on the common fishery policy is leading to us being forced out of fishing. An island nation cut off from Europe by land, sea and air through the Brexit is now being forced out, and we're coming into the TCA agreement that's up next, and we have nobody at the PESH committee. I fear for our future worse than I ever did, and you've known that I hadn't gotten anything wrong yet. The positives are the industry itself, right? 95% of it anyway, has come together and is going out there to raise these issues outside there. We have put forward solutions. We have asked nobody to give up something that they're not able to give up. We're asking for a better management and a share out of the stocks to allow our boats to fish more sustainably themselves, not just for the fish, but to cut down on diesel and fuel so they don't be traveling hundreds of miles to catch a few ton of fish. Whereas if they stayed where they were, they could catch another species, come in and land it, and save on the carbon footprint and money and better manage our resource. I want to talk to you about, we need anybody that's watching your program to start backing fishermen, to start backing Ireland's right to keep and retain our right as an island nation, a sovereign nation, to catch and avail of the resource of our own waters. We need people to start speaking up on social media, start writing to the ministers, start writing to our government, to our Taoiseach, and even to Europe. And they can get those details from us if they contact us. or I'm sure you'd be happy as well to put up those details of who to contact in Europe and the commissioner. And that's what will get attraction, people power. It happened with us, with the Russians, when we were covered all over the world. If that was just us making noise, blowing Castletown and nobody heard about us, the Russians would have done whatever they wanted. So we have to use what we can. Oliver, and I'm pleading on this program now, knowing the dire states that we're in, that people get up and do something. Help us, help your industry, help your fellow Irish men and women who are risking enough going to sea in bad, worsening weather conditions. And don't believe the hype that these people are overfishing. They are not. We stay within the confines. Just like I said, we will take the 22% cut in the mackerel, despite that being over a fifth of our earnings gone again. Luckily, we have the likes of the boarfish to concentrate on. There's a 40% increase in that, and the return of the horse mackerel and blue whiting is only cut 5%, even though we have a very small share. You might have seen that up online where the catch is 1.44 million and we get less than 60,000. So you can imagine our share out of that. It's tiny, and I mean tiny. I think it's less than 3%. So these are the things I wanted to talk to you about, just to let you know that ourselves in the industry are trying to rally together and try and do the best that we can to represent our industry abroad and come up with solutions, not just to go over there and bang the table and say, well, this is what we want. This is how you can give it. This is how we can manage it. This is how we can move forward. And we need help on.
Well, you definitely bring solutions to the table. And problem is, sometimes there's a little bit of friction there between the fishing industry representatives and the minister. At the moment, there's a general election in the offing. It's sometime November, December, January or February. But if it comes within the next 2 months, how damaging could that be for the Irish fishing industry?
Well, normally you would say that it would be very bad that a minister would be distracted from his duties. Genuinely you would. You'd say, but I don't think the man, in fairness, and I've been critical of him in the past, really had his attention on the industry. I think he believed what he was doing was sufficient. And, in fairness, there was an awful lot of money put into the industry on paper. It looked fantastic. Look at all the money the industry is getting. But they were getting it because they had massive losses. What they got dwarfed what they lost. It didn't make us whole. In actual fact, it made us worse. But it is incredible that just because you gave money, and not even ours, it came from Europe, I called it blood money, that was enough, and that we shouldn't moan, it's a crazy way of looking at it, in my view. So is the minister going to be on board with us going forward if there wasn't an election? I'm not quite sure. I don't want to be. A minister has a massive seal of office. It's a big privilege to be elected. Genuinely, I know that myself. It's even better. It's some privilege to get the seal of office, like to be at the cabinet table, but to be a senior minister, that's a step above. There's I don't know, is it 16 cabinet senior positions, and he's one of them. But you're asking me, would I be fearful if the elections are on? No, actually, I'm hoping that it might encourage others that may have aspirations to maybe talk to us and listen to us more coming into the elections, take on board what we've been trying to say for the last number of years, and get a minimum of a minister for state, a junior minister with specific responsibilities in fisheries. And I know people say, well, you're losing the minister at the senior cabinet table. But sure, we've a junior minister for forestry. We have a junior ministry in agriculture as well too. I don't even know what their portfolios are, so that'll tell you. But I don't see anything wrong with a junior minister for fisheries. That's the person that'll be giving their full attention to the fishing industry. We're an island nation. We're the only ones that don't have that. And you look and you see from your peers and take direction. No wonder nobody wanted to go on the fish committee. If they seen what was happening at home and nobody talking about fishing and in government circles and everything else, sure we won't lose a vote. We don't go on the fish committee. Sure, I think they've given up the ghost on fishing. I hope the Irish people haven't. It's your right to be able to fish around our waters. It's your son's right, your daughter's right. You mightn't be tooled up to be able to do that. You mightn't be a fisherman, but God knows what will happen in the next generation or generation around the corner. They might have an interest in going fishing, or they might find themselves in a boat or going fishing. Wouldn't it be nice? But the way things are going now, we won't have that right, because every time a decommissioning scheme comes, the actual right to go fishing is extinguished. We're down to 140 boats now. And as I said, people say we've overfished. But if there's overfishing, why are all the boats still coming into our waters catching fish? All the other fleets, they're dwarfing our numbers. We're only a small player in our own backyard. Like, it's crazy.
Well, it's not as if they're getting rid of fishing altogether out of the Irish EEZ. In actual fact, all they're doing is getting rid of their own fleet and getting rid of a very, very important base for food security, which other countries like Spain, Portugal, France, and the Netherlands, they're all to kill you to get. Our government seems to be a little bit slow or something wrong in that department, where they don't understand how important food security is for a country.
Absolutely. When the World War was the last time my uncle died trying to bring in products into the UK and Ireland, he was sunk by a submarine, the German U-boat. That'll repeat, and look at the modernization that's there now. Can you imagine if you're depending? And yet all we have to do is just go off our shoreline and catch the food and bring it in and feed our people. I don't understand how we can throw such a resource to the wind and not think twice about it. It's worth billions. Like, there's no doubting about it. Just because we're not getting the billions out of it doesn't mean that that's not there. We have the gold mine and we can access it. But we're being told by Europe and by our government that it's better to give it away and give it for something else than it is to utilize it ourselves. Very hard to take for people who have spent generations building up their businesses to have these modern vessels that, we would only dream about 40 years ago, genuinely, that'll go anywhere in Europe, or even up as far as nearly the Arctic Circle and down to the Bay of Biscay. And yet we can't keep them at sea longer than a couple of months. Makes no sense.
Yeah, and that's something people forget, is that it has taken a serious effort for the Irish fleet to get from where it was, small inshore boats, back in the 1950s, to where it is today. And that's been swiped off the table. People have been told to forget about their businesses. You wouldn't get that in farming. You wouldn't get that in a lot of other areas. And it's hugely disappointing.
Yeah, well, just to bring back your point now, to people that don't know anything about fishing, right? So you've actually hit the nail on the head. Forget about fishing now for a second. Imagine this. Somebody rocks up to a farmer's gate and his door, and they say, listen, the milk bunker tanker, that you refrigerate the milk, right? That's no longer viable. 200 cows that you have in the field now in the tractor, that's worth 200,000, no longer viable. What we want to do now is to take you back to the donkey and cart. We'll have the milk churns that are not refrigerated anymore, and we'll put you back to that. And that's the way to sustain yourself. And going forward, the artisanal way. And that's mad. So, this is the same in fishing.
Well, they'll do the same, Patrick. They'll tell you to go back the way, and then what they'll do is, down at the end of your field, they'll put in turbines and tell you can't go there. So, that's basically what they're doing to the fishermen, is they're clearing them out to make way for a new industry that they hope will make them millions and rob coastal communities of the right to enjoy the sea and to have use off the sea in order to sustain themselves. That's my point of view. It might not be everybody's point of view, or people may not agree with it, but I see that happening right around every coastal area. And whether you're in Ireland, the UK, or in Europe, there seems to be a huge march towards that.
Now, we were at the December Council, and I reiterated my request from ISIS, I suppose. They're not the chairperson, but they're the vice chair. They're a vice chair. They changed the wording from advice to a consideration. But the consideration is that none of this development will be happening in the water unless a full evaluation is carried out to know what the predictive damages or effects would be. And until that's certified, nothing should happen. Here you have at least the scientists saying that the precautionary approach is the best to afford here. Maybe we'll continue that conversation at another time, but I'm going to finish up with this now and I ask once again, anybody watching this, and I hope it'll be thousands, not to hundreds, thousands and tens of thousands to millions. Genuinely, folks, anybody watching this, regardless of what you feel about me or anybody involved in the industry, please consider your country. Please consider the rights of your future generations to be able to go out in a boat legally and catch fish off our coastline to come back and bring it in for you either to enjoy or sell it abroad and bring money into our exchequer and create jobs here. There are billions of euros worth of fish around our oceans outside that can be harvested sustainably. The problem is others are given the rights to that than we are. And it's time for the Irish people to stand up with the people that are dependent on the resource, our coastal communities, to stay going and for you to get something out of it as well. Please look out for the emails that will be shared by our industry and the media events that we're going to have to do to support us. Listen to the radio, ring in the shows. We are desperate for people to help your fellow Irish men and women who depend on this resource. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrick.